Too many times throughout my ministry, as I have been conducting funerals, I've walked into the midst of incredible tension in families. I've seen it that funeral directors have had to make separate visiting times for different family members. I've seen it where people have almost come to physical blows. And oftentimes, these issues surround things of money. Who's going to get what after the person who is deceased has been buried and laid to rest? I even saw this happen in my own family in 1999 when my grandmother died. The family, most of us, were all ready just to clean up the house, throw away the things that needed to be thrown away, and get rid of the rest of the stuff. But there was one family member who lawyered up, who wanted what he wanted. So we had to itemize every single item in the house, right down to the toilet paper on the toilet roll. That's how bad it was. It's funny, but it's sad. And who wants to deal with that kind of stuff in the midst of the emotions that come from loss? But I think this is exactly the type of thing that Jesus was getting at in our gospel lesson when he said, take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Now, money in itself is not a bad thing. That's not what this is about. Money is another one of those gifts and those blessings that God gives us in life in order to provide and take care of ourselves and our families. We know that a lot of good things can be done with money. A lot of good things can come from money. Sometimes we see our politicians fighting over how money should be spent. And we question the way they fight, but in essence, it's a question of how can they take those public funds and use them for public good. We see in our own families how money can provide education and all sorts of things that are so needed to be successful and healthy in this life, in this world. Charitable contributions, of which Americans are some of the most generous, are so vital and important in making the world a better place. And here at St. Paul's, we talk on occasion how when we offer of the blessings, the treasures that God gives to us, God turns around and uses them for our well-being and our benefit. So money in itself is not the problem. But the question for us is what's the attitude in our heart? How do we see it? What do we do with it? And it's interesting to note that out of all the topics that Jesus talks about in the Bible, money is the topic that he touches on the most. Why? Because Jesus knows and Jesus recognizes what a temptation and struggle it can be to deal with the possessions and the treasures that God gives to us in the best and the most healthy way. It's been going on forever. Thousands and thousands of years ago, King Solomon, in our Old Testament lesson from Ecclesiastes, was lamenting how people toil and labor for so many things in their life, and it's just vanity. What does it add up to? What good does it do? And Jesus ultimately in the gospel lesson, as he tells the story of a rich man storing up all the stuff for himself, is asking the question, what's most important in your life? What matters the most when it comes down? And we may want to say, yeah, our lives are in order. We've got this in a good place. But then we hear over and over again of the struggles that people have with possessions. We know that hoarding is a big issue and a big problem with some people in the world. We hear stories. Several years ago, there was a man in an apartment in Manhattan who fell and broke his leg. It took the paramedics 2 days to clean a path as they were bagging garbage, over 50 bags of garbage, to finally get to him, that they could get him out of his apartment. There was another couple in San Francisco that could not sleep in their bed together at the same time. They had to take turns because of all the stuff that surrounded them in life. Now, maybe our lives aren't that bad, I hope. But how do we see the possessions in our lives? Are there times where things get out of whack? Do we find ourselves working 2 income houses or many different jobs and confusing wants with what we really need in our life? Have we sacrificed precious time with our loved ones to get stuff when maybe that time would have been spent better doing something different. Maybe the priorities in our life need to be looked at. So what does this mean? Is Jesus asking us just to give up on our treasures? Is he asking us to take a vow of poverty and give everything to God? No! What the call is from the gospel lesson, what Jesus is asking is what's most important. How do you see the priorities of your life? And he references at the end of the gospel lesson being rich toward God. And what does rich toward God mean? It means possessing love, and grace, and forgiveness, and community, and those blessings that can't be measured in worth or in possessions. What being rich towards God means is understanding that you are the most important thing to the God who created you. So precious and so much of a treasure were you that your God was willing to die for you, to give you what you need in life. Understanding and knowing that changes our perspective, helps us to see the world in a different place, and helps us to put in the proper place all the things that surround us. Recently, the word BAE, B-A-E, has worked its way into our vocabulary today. It especially worked its way into our vocabulary in 2014 when Miley Cyrus and Pharrell released a song with this in the title. And from what I can research and understand, the word BAE is shorthand or an acronym for before anyone else. It's a term of endearment. It's like saying to somebody, you're my BAE, my before anyone else. It's one of those cute little relationship things. Well, when I hear it, I want to vomit. But it kind of makes a good point for our theme today, for our thoughts today. Who's your BAE? What's before anything and anyone else in your life? Where would you be in this story if Jesus was telling you? It's interesting how we measure worth in life, net worth. The value of 401ks, 403bs, the houses we live in, the cars that we drive, and all those things. But when it comes down to it, when all is said and done, and it's our funeral, and we're all going to get there one day, what are people going to be talking about? What are they going to remember us for? When the gifts of faith, when the presence of God is before anything and anyone else in our lives, we are rich. It helps us change our perspective. It helps us live more with less. And it truly helps us understand what matters in life. Amen.